Okay, here's a number that kind of jumps out. The global market for interspinous spacers is heading towards almost $90 million in 2025.
Wow. Yeah. Nearly 90 million.
It really puts a spotlight on spinal health, doesn't it? And finding solutions. I imagine that resonates with quite a few people listening.
Oh, absolutely. Spinal problems, unfortunately, seem to be on the rise.
Mhm.
And, understanding the market for these treatments tells us a lot about where things are heading in this area of medicine.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this then. Welcome everyone to this deep dive. We're looking at the interspinous spacer market, using a recent report as our guide.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're not familiar, these spacers are small devices. They're implanted between the vertebrae, the bones in your spine.
Right. The goal is usually easing pain, adding some stability, keeping things aligned.
Exactly. For conditions like spinal stenosis or degenerative disc disease.
Yeah,
Things that can really, really impact quality of life.
definitely. And just to be clear, we're not getting into the nitty-gritty of the surgery itself today, but more the market dynamics around it.
Good point. Our source is the Global Interspinous Spacer Market Report 2025.
Yep. And we're aiming to pull out the key stuff: market size, growth projections, what's pushing it forward, what's holding it back, and how the different regions compare.
The idea is to give you the essential insights, get you informed quickly without getting bogged down in excessive detail.
Exactly. You're fast-tracked to understanding the key trends.
And helping us make sense of it all, we have our expert here providing context and analysis. So let's just dive right in. What's the starting point? How big is this market right now? And where's it going?
Okay, so the report puts the global market size for 2025 at USD 89.56 million.
89.56 million. Okay.
But what's really interesting is the forecast. By 2033, it's expected to hit USD 147.11 million.
Wow, that's quite a jump, a really substantial climb.
It is. And that works out to a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of 6.40% between 2025 and 2033.
6.4% per year on average.
Exactly. And linking back to what we said earlier, a lot of this growth is really being fueled by that increasing number of spinal disorders, aging populations, lifestyle factors. It all contributes to a greater need for effective treatments.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So geographically speaking, where's the main action happening right now? Where's the biggest slice of that market?
Right now, North America is definitely the leader. It accounts for over 40% of the global revenue.
Over 40%. Okay.
For 2025, that North American market is estimated at USD 33.14 million, and it's projected to grow at a CAGR of 4.9% through 2033.
So still growing, but maybe a bit slower than the global average.
A little bit, yeah. Within that, the U.S. is the dominant player, about USD 26.15 million in 2025, with a 4.7% CAGR.
Got it.
Canada is around 3.98 million, Mexico about 3.02 million, with CAGRs in the mid-5s, 5.7% and 5.4% respectively. So yeah, North America is the big one currently.
Okay, so North America leads the pack. What about Europe? Are they a significant player too?
Oh, absolutely. Europe holds a very significant share as well. We're talking over 30% of the global revenue.
Over 3%. Right.
That translates to about USD 25.97 million in 2025.
Yeah.
And within Europe, you've got key markets like the UK, estimated at 4.36 million, with a pretty strong CAGR of 6.3%. And Germany, even bigger at 5.14 million, though slightly slower growth at 5.7% of CAGR. So Europe's a major force.
Interesting. So North America and Europe together make up, what, over 70% of the market?
Yeah, roughly. They're the established centers right now.
Okay. Now, I'm really curious about the Asia-Pacific region. We always hear about high growth potential there. How does it stack up?
You're right to ask. Asia-Pacific is fascinating. Currently, its share is around 23%, so about USD 21.49 million in 2025.
Okay, smaller share than Europe currently.
Yes, but here's the kicker. The projected CAGR is 9.1% through 2033.
Wow, 9.1%. That's significantly higher.
It really is. That makes it the fastest growing region by a noticeable margin. China is a huge part of that 9.03 million market size, 8.6% CAGR. And India, look at this, USD 2.15 million market size, but an 11% CAGR projected.
11%. That's incredible growth. So Asia-Pacific is really the one to watch for future expansion.
Absolutely. It points to really dynamic development happening there.
Okay, what about the other regions? South America, Middle East, Africa. Are they significant factors?
They have smaller shares currently, but still showing decent growth. South America is over 5%, around $3.4 million in 2025, with a 7.1% CAGR.
Still above the global average growth.
Yep. The Middle East is smaller, around 2% share, maybe 3.58 million, but a strong 7.7% CAGR. And Africa is about 1% share, just under 2 million, growing at 6.7%. So smaller bases, but definitely growing.
Got it. So a clear picture of the global distribution and growth rates. Now, the report breaks things down further, right? Like the different types of spacers.
It does, yes. The main distinction is between static and dynamic interspinous spacers.
Static and dynamic, okay.
And the report indicates that static spacers are currently the dominant type in the market.
Why is that?
Well, it seems to come down to a few things. Their design is generally simpler. They have a longer track record of effectiveness and potentially a lower risk profile, fewer complications associated with them.
So they provide a fixed level of decompression.
Essentially, yes. Stable decompression, keeping that space open between the spinous processes.
Okay. And dynamic spacers, what's their angle?
Dynamic ones are designed to allow for some controlled movement, some flexibility at that spinal level after they're implanted. It's a different philosophy.
Interesting.
But yeah, for now, the report suggests static spacers have seen wider adoption. That could change, of course, as technology evolves.
Makes sense. Okay, what about the reasons why people get these? What are the main medical conditions, the indications?
The two big ones driving this market are lumbar spinal stenosis, LSS for short.
Right, narrowing of the spinal canal.
Exactly. And the other is degenerative disc disease, or DDD.
Where the discs wear down.
Correct. LSS is a major factor, especially with aging populations. As people get older, that narrowing becomes more common, putting pressure on nerves. Spacers offer a less invasive surgical option compared to, say, a laminectomy.
Less invasive is definitely appealing.
For sure. And DDD, the breakdown of those spinal discs, is also a huge contributor to chronic back pain and instability, so spacers are used there too to help stabilize and reduce pain.
So again, that aging demographic trend is a really powerful underlying driver here for both conditions.
Absolutely critical.
Now, where are these procedures actually happening? Who are the main end users? Hospitals, clinics.
The report breaks it down into hospitals, orthopedic clinics, and ambulatory surgical centers, or ASCs.
Okay.
And right now, hospitals hold the largest share, which, makes sense. They have the infrastructure, the ability to handle complex cases, the established systems for these kinds of surgery.
Right, the traditional setting. But I recall the report mentioning one segment growing particularly fast.
Yes, exactly. Orthopedic clinics. They're identified as the fastest growing end user segment.
Why the rapid growth there?
It seems tied directly to that trend we mentioned, the increasing adoption of minimally invasive surgical techniques. Implanting these spacers often fits that description.
Oh, okay.
So orthopedic clinics are becoming more specialized, offering these less invasive options, maybe in a more focused setting than a large hospital. That's driving expansion in that segment. ASCs also play a part, offering efficiency and potentially lower costs for suitable patients.
So a definite shift towards more specialized, potentially outpatient settings. Okay, let's dig into the market dynamics. What's really pushing this market forward, the key drivers?
Well, we've touched on some already. First, that increasing prevalence of spinal conditions, LSS, DDD, that's fundamental.
Right, the growing need.
Second, the advancements in the surgical procedures themselves. Minimally invasive approaches mean better patient outcomes, quicker recovery, higher satisfaction generally. That encourages adoption.
Makes sense. Better results drive demand.
Exactly. And third, there's ongoing innovation in the spacer devices themselves. New designs, better materials, improved functionality.
Any examples of that kind of innovation?
Yeah, the report mentions things like Globus Medical using robotic systems for spinal surgery in places like Australia. That points to how technology is enhancing precision and potentially outcomes.
Robotics in spine surgery.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so those are the drivers. What about the flip side? Are there things holding the market back? Restraints?
Yes, a couple of significant ones. One is the cost. These procedures, the devices themselves, can be quite expensive.
The affordability issue.
Precisely. That can definitely limit access for patients, especially depending on insurance coverage or the healthcare system they're in. It impacts overall market adoption.
Okay, cost is a big one. Anything else?
The other major factor is the regulatory landscape. Getting medical devices approved, especially implants, involves really stringent processes.
Right, safety and efficacy hurdles.
Exactly. And while necessary, these rigorous approvals can sometimes slow down the introduction of new innovations and potentially hinder market entry for some companies.
So it's that classic medtech balance.
Yeah.
Innovation versus regulation and cost.
Very much so. It's a constant dynamic.
What about wider trends? Any big picture healthcare patterns influencing this specific market?
Definitely. There's a clear, powerful trend towards less invasive treatments across many areas of surgery, and spine is no exception.
People want simpler, faster recoveries if possible.
Understandably. So, patients and surgeons are increasingly looking for alternatives to major open spinal fusion, for example. Interspinous spacers fit right into that demand.
That makes sense.
And again, that demographic shift, the aging global population, just means a larger pool of people potentially needing spinal surgery of some kind. That underpins the whole market's growth.
Any recent examples of advancements reflecting that less invasive trend?
Yeah, the report mentions the US FDA approving LifeSpine's ProLift microexpandable spacer system. That sounds like exactly the kind of innovation expandable, maybe delivered through a smaller incision that caters to this demand.
Got it. So the momentum is clearly towards less invasive solutions.
Yeah.
Now, who are the main companies competing in this space? You mentioned Globus and LifeSpine.
Right. It's described as a highly competitive market. Key players are really focused on R&D, product innovation, and expanding their reach.
So who are some of the big names?
The report lists quite a few. Besides Globus Medical and LifeSpine, there's Nuvasive Inc., Paradigm Spine, Medtronic and a giant in medtech,
Of course.
Boston Scientific, Zimmer Biomet, Mikai SPA, Synthes, which is part of J&J, and Alphatech Spine Inc. It's a mix of large diversified companies and more spine-focused specialists.
That's a solid list. Any recent moves mentioned besides the LifeSpine approval?
Yeah, it notes Nuvasive introducing a thin ACP system that likely relates to anterior cervical plating, maybe adjacent to the spacer market, but showing their activity. And it also mentions LifeSpine's TrueLift lateral expandable spacer system receiving FDA clearance, another example of that expandable tech trend.
Okay, so lots of activity, lots of competition driving innovation. Good to see. Now, let's circle back to the regions for a moment. You said North America leads now, but Asia Pacific is growing fastest. Can we unpack the why behind that a bit more?
Sure, North America's current dominance, that 40% plus share in 2025, really comes down to its advanced healthcare infrastructure, high healthcare spending, and the strong presence of many leading device companies headquartered there.
Plus the high prevalence rates.
Exactly. The report mentions estimates of hundreds of thousands of U.S. adults suffering from lumbar spinal stenosis alone. So the patient pool is large.
Okay. And Asia Pacific's rapid growth.
That's driven largely by demographics, huge populations, and critically rapidly aging populations in many key countries. Aging correlates strongly with degenerative spinal conditions.
By more potential patients coming online, so to speak.
Precisely. Combine that with rising healthcare spending in the region, improving access to advanced medical care, and growing awareness, it creates fertile ground for market growth. That 9.1 per 6 CAGR reflects that potential.
It mentions a Canadian statistic about the 85-plus group growing fast as a global trend example too, right?
Yeah, that's used to illustrate the broader point globally. The number of very elderly people is increasing significantly, and this demographic is disproportionately affected by conditions like LSS, driving demand worldwide, but especially rapidly in regions like Asia Pacific, starting from a lower base.
That provides really good context for those regional dynamics. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. If you had to summarize the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive, what would they be?
Okay, key takeaways. 1. The global market is already substantial, near 90 million in 2025, and projected to grow, significantly reaching almost 150 million by 2033.
Driven by aging and minimally invasive trends.
Exactly. 2. North America is the current leader in market share, but 3. Asia Pacific is the region to watch, with the fastest projected growth rate significantly outpacing others.
Got it. What else?
4. Within the devices themselves, static spacers currently dominate over dynamic ones. And 5. In terms of where procedures happen, while hospitals are biggest now, orthopedic clinics are the fastest growing segment, reflecting that minimally invasive shift.
That's a really clear, concise summary. It paints a solid picture of where this market stands and where it seems to be heading. It's fascinating how demographics and tech are shaping this medical field.
It really is.
So for you, the listener, as you digest all this information on market size, growth, and trends, here's something perhaps to mull over. Thinking beyond the market numbers, how might future breakthroughs in material science, maybe new biocompatible polymers or smart materials, further revolutionize how these interspinous spacers are designed? Could we see devices that actively adapt over time or even promote tissue regeneration? It's certainly food for thought as we look towards the future of spinal care.